Let's take a step back from the spectacle for a moment. Let's take a step back from the low blow and the F5 and the parking lot ambush and the corridor standoff and the security personnel physically stepping between two of the most dangerous human beings in WWE's current roster. Let's take a step back from all of that visceral, electric, undeniably compelling television and ask the question that Paul Heyman was counting on nobody asking. Who benefits from Oba Femi choosing Brock Lesnar instead of a world championship? Who benefits from the King of the Ring, the most dominant force in WWE in years, the man who beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania and earned a guaranteed title shot through one of the most grueling tournaments the company runs? Who benefits from that man redirecting all of that momentum and all of that contractual leverage away from a championship and into a Hell in a Cell match? Not Oba Femi, not in any straightforward sense. Not in the sense that a championship win would benefit him, not in the sense that cashing the King of the Ring contract for Roman Reigns' World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam and potentially walking out as champion would benefit him. Femi's career trajectory, in cold, objective terms, is better served by the guaranteed title shot than by any other available option. That is simply true. Paul Heyman benefits, and Brock Lesnar benefits. And if the reports about WWE's long-term planning are accurate, if the company genuinely intends to save Femi versus Roman for WrestleMania 43, then Lesnar's advocate just engineered the single most significant misdirection of the entire SummerSlam build. He provoked Oba Femi's anger. He weaponized it. He used it to lock Femi into the one match that serves Lesnar's interests rather than Femi's. Welcome back to Wrestling Stands. The Wiseman just earned his nickname. Quick favor before we get into it, if you're enjoying this kind of content, please smash that like button and hit subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without ever subscribing. It's completely free for you, but it genuinely means the world to us and helps the channel grow. Already subscribed? You absolute legend, thank you so much. Right, let's get into it. Let's start from the beginning of the night, because the sequence of events needs to be laid out clearly for the full picture of what Heyman orchestrated to be visible. Oba Femi came to Raw with the microphone and the moment and the audience waiting for the announcement. King of the Ring winner, guaranteed title shot, SummerSlam opponent TBD. Everything in this situation favored Femi. He had the contract, the momentum, the crowd, and the narrative gravity of a performer who has been building to exactly this kind of moment for months. The announcement was supposed to be his completely. Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman came out before he could make it. Low blow, F5. Not a message wrapped in competitive language or a challenge issued with any pretense of mutual respect. A cheap shot, a signature move, and the specific quality of disruption that is designed to shift the emotional temperature of a moment from controlled to chaotic as quickly as possible. Why? Because Paul Heyman understands anger better than almost any manager in the history of professional wrestling. He knows, from decades of observing how people respond to being publicly humiliated, physically cheapened, attacked in moments designed to strip away the dignity of their position. He knows that anger makes people make decisions that serve the person who provoked the anger rather than the person experiencing it. Femi's anger, in the immediate aftermath of the F5, was real and it was hot, and the decision it produced, demanding the Lesnar match, going to Adam Pearce, pausing the guaranteed title shot, formalizing the Hell in a Cell, was a decision made from that anger, from the specific, consuming need to address the disrespect in the most direct, physically decisive way available. Heyman watched all of it happen and said nothing, because nothing needed to be said. The plan had worked. Let's talk about the corridor standoff after Raw, because it adds an important layer to the understanding of both men's psychological states as SummerSlam approaches. After the show went off-air, Femi and Lesnar crossed paths backstage at the Jim Whelan Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. The confrontation that followed required security intervention to prevent it becoming immediately physical, which tells you something about the heat between these two men even outside the structured environment of an on-screen segment. There are confrontations that require security in a theatrical, performative sense, and there are confrontations that require security because the people involved are genuinely on the verge of not waiting for the scheduled match to resolve things between them. This appeared to be the second kind. The words exchanged in that corridor are not fully known, but the intensity of the exchange and the necessity of physical intervention suggests that what passed between Femi and Lesnar went beyond promotional bluster. This was two men who have already physically competed once, who have documented real stakes history with each other, who are now heading toward a rubber match inside the most brutal structure WWE has, and who, standing in a corridor in Atlantic City, were close enough to each other to feel the full weight of what is coming without the distance of a screen or a stage to mediate it. Lesnar's undefeated streak inside Hell in a Cell is the detail that Paul Heyman is leaning on. It is real and it is significant, and it is the specific psychological pressure point that Heyman has identified as the most useful leverage available to him in managing Oba Femi's approach to this match. Lesnar inside the cell is a different proposition from Lesnar in any other environment. The structure has historically amplified his specific advantages: the brutality, the endurance, the capacity to absorb and return punishment across an extended period without anything capable of interrupting the match from outside. Femi chose this. He chose the cell over the title shot. And Heyman, who has been operating in this industry long enough to understand exactly what the cell does to challengers entering it for the first time against Lesnar, would not have provoked that choice if he wasn't confident it served his client's interests. Now let's talk about the long game, because this is the piece of this story that changes everything about how we should read the Femi-Lesnar match and its place in the broader narrative architecture of WWE Summer and beyond. Reports indicate that WWE is planning to save Oba Femi vs Roman Reigns for WrestleMania 43, not SummerSlam, not the next major premium live event after that. WrestleMania, the biggest, most significant, most emotionally weighted event in the professional wrestling calendar. If that reporting is accurate, and it is consistent with the kind of long-term thinking that characterizes WWE's best storytelling decisions, then everything happening right now with Femi and Lesnar is explicitly prologue. Femi does not lose the Roman story by engaging with Lesnar first. He gains something from it. He gains the completion of a trilogy with the most credible available opponent before arriving at WrestleMania, having definitively closed every other major narrative thread. He arrives at the confrontation with Roman Reigns with nothing unresolved, nothing unfinished, nothing that can be used to suggest that the championship challenge is a distraction from a larger emotional agenda. The WrestleMania stage for Femi vs Roman also makes sense at a level that goes beyond match quality. WrestleMania is where generational statements get made. It is where the history books have their most significant entries. Oba Femi's rise, the WrestleMania win over Lesnar, the King of the Ring, the Hell in a Cell rubber match, and then the championship confrontation with Roman Reigns at the grandest stage, is a specific and compelling career arc. Not a direct line from pointer to the title, but a path that demonstrates completeness and credibility through earned victories at significant levels before arriving at the championship opportunity. If that is the plan, it is a genuinely good plan, and it means that SummerSlam's Hell in a Cell, rather than being the most significant match of Oba Femi's current trajectory, is actually the penultimate chapter. The chapter that closes the Lesnar story and opens the door to the chapter that matters most. Here is the complication, though, and it is a genuine one: Oba Femi does not know he is the protagonist of a long-term storytelling plan. He made his decision based on anger and conviction and the specific desire to settle something with Brock Lesnar that the WrestleMania result did not fully resolve, because Lesnar's response to losing cleanly was a low blow and an F5 rather than any acknowledgement of what the result meant. From Femi's perspective, the Hell in a Cell is not prologue. It is the thing that needs to happen. The Lesnar account cannot remain open while he pursues a championship, because the open account represents an unresolved question about whether the WrestleMania result holds up in a different context. Femi needs to answer that question for himself, regardless of what it costs him in terms of title shot timing. That authenticity of motivation, the genuine, anger-driven, conviction-based decision to prioritize the Lesnar match over the immediate championship opportunity, is what makes the story compelling rather than mechanical. Because if Femi simply made a calculated decision to fight Lesnar first and Roman later because the long-term narrative logic suggested it, that decision would be interesting, but it would not have the emotional heat that makes audiences genuinely invested. The heat exists because Heyman found the thing that would make Femi abandon the chess player's logic and operate on instinct. The low blow was specifically designed to access something underneath Femi's calculated, confident exterior. And it worked. Paul Heyman used Femi's authentic anger to achieve what serves Lesnar's interests. The distinction between those two things, genuine anger that produces a decision versus manufactured anger that produces the same decision, is invisible to the audience watching in the moment. Both produce Hell in a Cell at SummerSlam, but the authenticity of Femi's motivation is what makes the match feel genuinely personal rather than structurally arranged. And genuinely personal, inside Hell in a Cell, with Lesnar's undefeated streak in the structure on one side and Oba Femi's WrestleMania victory on the other, that is the match. Let's talk about where Lesnar's undefeated Cell record intersects with Femi's specific qualities as a competitor, because this is the most interesting pre-match analytical question available. The Cell has historically served as an amplifier of Lesnar's specific advantages. Extended duration without interruption, the physical brutality of the structure itself as a weapon, the psychological pressure of knowing that nothing is going to save you from the inside, these conditions play to Lesnar's strengths in ways that standard match environments do not always allow. But here is the thing about Oba Femi that makes the cell calculus different from Lesnar's previous cell defenses of that undefeated record. Femi has already beaten him. The fear of Brock Lesnar, which is one of the most significant psychological variables in any Lesnar matchup, is not a variable for Oba Femi. He has been on the receiving end of Lesnar's offense at WrestleMania. He knows what it feels like. He knows what he had to absorb and what he had to produce to come out on the other side of it as the winner. The cell does not introduce new unknowns for Femi in the way it does for most of Lesnar's opponents. Most challengers entering Hell in a Cell against Lesnar are facing the amplified version of a threat they have not yet experienced in full. Femi is entering a different version of a threat he has already measured, assessed, and overcome. Does the cell change the equation enough to change the result? Lesnar believes it does. Paul Heyman engineered the choice of match specifically because he believes it does. Lesnar's undefeated streak in the structure is not an accident, it is a record built on the precise advantage the environment gives him. But Oba Femi has the one thing that neutralizes the most significant of those advantages. He has experience of Lesnar, specifically, experience of winning against Lesnar, and that experience does not disappear when the cell is lowered. SummerSlam is the 1st of August in Minneapolis, Lesnar's hometown. Hell in a Cell, the rubber match of a trilogy that began with Oba Femi's WrestleMania victory and escalated through low blows and parking lot ambushes and corridor confrontations requiring security intervention. Paul Heyman used Oba Femi's anger to get the match he wanted for Brock Lesnar. Whether that was the right move or the most elaborate trap in WWE's current storytelling, a trap that locks Lesnar into a structure with someone who has already proven they can beat him, precisely by making that person angry enough to commit, is the question that Minneapolis answers. The wise man played the long game. Oba Femi played on instinct. SummerSlam is where we find out which one was right. Cheers for watching, it genuinely means everything. We'll see you in the next one.